Marjorie Blakely had been sifting donations long enough to know that most boxes contained predictable detritus, faded pillowcases, incomplete board games, paperbacks permanently scented with mildew. When the storm rolled over Whitminster late on Tuesday afternoon, she almost closed Second Chances early. But just as she reached for the lights, the bell above the thrift shop door tinkled, and a flustered young courier deposited 2 cartons addressed to her by name. "From the probate office," he mumbled, already backing into the rain. "Part of the Harold Pritchard estate." The name rang a faint bell. Pritchard had been one of Whitminster's longest practicing estate agents, a man whose glossy smile watched over half the town from bus stop billboards. He'd died 3 weeks earlier, apparently from a heart attack behind the wheel of his Jaguar. Marjorie remembered the speculation: too much stress, too many secrets, and that persistent rumour he'd been preparing to blow the whistle on something much larger than house prices. She slid a box cutter through the first carton. Files, client ledgers, a jumble of property keys labelled with curling masking tape. All too official for a thrift shop. She was about to ring the probate office when she noticed the second box bore a handwritten note. "For personal disposal, trust Ms. M. Blakely's discretion." She frowned. She'd never met Pritchard. Why trust her? Curiosity trumped protocol, and she opened the second box. On top lay a Walkman, cobalt blue plastic scuffed by decades of service, its foam headphones cracked like orange peyote buttons left in the desert. Beneath it sat a single clear cassette. The white insert card bore 4 words in thick green marker: "Play alone. Listen well." Against her better judgment, Marjorie locked the front door, dimmed the fluorescents, and slotted the tape into the player. The Walkman whirred, remarkably smooth, and then a man's voice seeped through one working earphone. It was not Harold Pritchard's. The voice sounded older, smoky, the kind that might have narrated late-night radio dramas in the 80s. "Good evening, seeker," it said. "If you are hearing this, you've acquired property left willingly adrift. Tonight, at precisely 9:47 p.m., an estate agent in Whitminster will die. You may confirm by tomorrow's dawn edition of the Chronicle." Marjorie's chest tightened. She checked her watch. 7:02 p.m., 2 hours and 45 minutes to... what? A prank? She hit stop, rewound, and played again. The message repeated verbatim, ending with a faint click. The tape compartment held a folded square of onion skin stationery. Inside, typed on a ribbon typewriter: "Item: Last will and testament, unregistered. Locate, study window, Ridge House. Custodian: you act before the piper collects his next fee." The bottom bore a single initial: V. Ridge House. Everyone in Whitminster knew it, an abandoned Victorian mansion hugging the western headland, unsold for years because Pritchard couldn't shift it. Locals whispered of asbestos and ghosts. Marjorie stood still long enough to hear the thunder recede, then fetched her coat. If this was a hoax, contacting the police would guarantee ridicule. If it wasn't, an estate agent was in danger. She decided on a compromise. Theo Sharp, the town archivist, friend since childhood, and possessor of an imagination as elastic as taffy. Theo arrived 10 minutes later, raincoat dripping, grey-streaked curls plastered to his forehead. Marjorie played the tape again. When the voice finished, Theo opened and closed his mouth like a carp, then said, "Well, that's grimly specific." "It can't be real," she insisted, though her pulse argued otherwise. "I'll ring Dr. Patel," Theo offered. "His real estate sideline counts. He lists properties on weekends." Marjorie's eyes widened. He's on call at the hospice tonight. He'll be awake. Do it. Theo stepped into the back office for privacy. When he returned, his face had gone the colour of unbleached linen. Patel's fine, but he mentioned something odd. His colleague, Lisa Berryman, a junior agent at Pritchard & Co., just collapsed during a showing on Hawthorne Crescent. Paramedics haven't reached her yet. The time was 9:18 p.m. Marjorie and Theo stared at each other, the silence bristling with unspoken dread. Ridge House felt less like folklore and more like a crossroads where someone had erected a warning sign and dared them to read it. "We can't ignore this," Theo murmured. Marjorie fetched a flashlight, first aid kit, and the Walkman. They locked up and drove through streets slick as gunmetal, arriving at Hawthorne Crescent as the ambulance pulled away. Through the steamed windscreen, they glimpsed EMTs compressing Lisa Berryman's chest. The ambulance's taillights vanished down the hill. Marjorie checked the clock on the dash. 9:46 p.m., 1 minute early. Theo exhaled shakily. Ridge House? Ridge House. They followed the coastal road until it devolved into gravel. The mansion loomed like a dark chess piece against a cloud-tattered sky. Ivy strangled the veranda rails. Salt wind had peeled off most of the paint. They parked behind a gnarled cedar and approached the front door. Surprisingly, the brass knob turned without resistance. Inside, dust motes floated in the beam of Marjorie's flashlight. Water stains freckled the ceiling. The air smelled of brine and rotting curtains. Yet the parquet floor was swept as though someone tended the emptiness. According to the note, the will waited in the study window. They followed a corridor lined with cracked sepia photographs of Ridge House in its prime. Many frames had been removed, their outlines ghosted onto wallpaper. The study door stood ajar. Walnut shelves bowed under the weight of damp legal volumes. On the north wall, a sash window rattled gently. Taped to the glass with aged cellophane was a manila envelope labelled Marjorie Blakely, again in green marker. Her name. Her knees almost buckled. Theo steadied her, then peeled the envelope free. Inside lay a thick document bound with ribbon, affixed with crimson wax bearing a monogrammed V identical to the one on the typewritten note. A sheet of modern printer paper topped the bundle. Keep safe. Read after paying the piper. Theo lifted an eyebrow. The piper presumably being whoever's killing estate agents? Or whatever, Marjorie whispered. Sudden footsteps overhead froze them. Marjorie doused the flashlight. Faint floorboard groans travelled from the west wing, then down the main staircase. A silhouette, tall and deliberate, crossed the hallway. Neither spoke until the soft creak dissipated. "Caretaker?" Theo suggested. "Caretaker's knock," she replied. Marjorie slipped the will under her coat. They exited through a side vestibule and hurried to the car. Only once the mansion's lights had vanished behind a rise did either breathe normally. In town, the Chronicle's Midnight Web edition confirmed Lisa Berryman's death. Massive cerebral hemorrhage, declared 9:50 p.m. Hospital arrival, DOA. Marjorie shivered despite the heater. She dropped Theo at his bungalow and swore she'd call at dawn. Then she drove home, Will cradled like a newborn on the passenger seat. Sleep was hopeless. She brewed tea and examined the document. The last will and testament of Vernon Abernathy Vane, name unfamiliar. The date, 14th of June, 1984. Executed privately, leaving a vast portfolio of coastal land, rental properties, and investment shares to one beneficiary. The rightful custodian who, upon hearing my prophetic record, chooses integrity over fear. Witness lines were blank. Vane's signature looped with antique flourish. The assets were worth tens of millions by modern valuations. Pritchard & Co. had handled many of them over the decades. Did Pritchard know? Did he die naturally? She reread Clause 8. Should any individual of avaricious stripe seek to misappropriate these holdings, let the toll be meted out in advance. Colour drained from her cheeks. Did Vane's will kill people? More rationally, was someone using the will and the tape to murder estate agents so only a worthy custodian would remain? At 3:14 a.m. her phone buzzed. Theo texted, "Call me now." Heart hammering, she dialed. Theo's voice quavered. "Berryman's autopsy reveals digitalis, foxglove poisoning, enough to stop a horse. Someone injected her." "Someone who knew the tape's prediction," Marjorie said. "Someone cleaning house," Theo agreed. "You need help." They decided to meet with Detective Inspector Leah Westcott, who'd frequented second chances often enough to trust Marjorie's instincts. By 8 a.m. they sat in Westcott's glassy office, tape recorder on the desk. Westcott listened twice. She didn't arrest them. That felt like progress. "This tape is 30-plus years old," she mused. "You say it accurately predicted Berryman's death. We'll need forensic audio, chain of custody. And the will." Marjorie slid Vane's testament across. Westcott scanned the pages. Her brow furrowed. "Vernon Vane, rings faint bells. My grandmother played bridge with a Vane who vanished mid-80s. No body, no investigation either. He was declared missing." Theo spoke up. "If Vane wrote this in 84, maybe he entrusted it to Pritchard. But Pritchard sat on it. Why only now does it surface?" Marjorie answered before thinking. "Because Pritchard knew someone was killing estate agents and he wanted out. The box labelled for my discretion. Maybe he chose a neutral party." Westcott folded her arms. "Then whoever's behind the murders is still at large. You're potentially next, since you hold the will." A chill trickled down Marjorie's spine. "I'm not an estate agent." "Maybe the algorithm expanded," Theo muttered. Westcott assigned 2 plainclothes constables to shadow Marjorie and impounded the tape for analysis. She also dispatched officers to secure Ridge House, but when they arrived, the mansion had burned. A localized interior blaze, the report read, suspiciously efficient. Staircase collapsed, no caretaker found, no tape deck or second cassette. Marjorie felt the vice tighten. Whoever set that fire now knew she had the will. The next evening, as dusk turned the harbour mauve, she closed second chances early. Constable Merewether, her shadow, waited out front. While setting the alarm, she noticed an object propped against the sorting table, a fresh cardboard box with no shipping label. Her name scrawled in green marker. Blood roared in her ears. She signalled Merewether, who radioed Westcott and requested the bomb squad. They evacuated neighbouring shops. When the techs arrived, they discovered no explosives, only another cassette tape, unspooled length wound around a weighted metronome ticking at 60 BPM. A note atop read, "You're out of time, custodian." Westcott convened them in her office again, frustration bleeding into her clipped vowels. Someone's playing concerto for cat and mouse. She tasked units with digging into the history of Vane Industries, Pritchard & Co., and every estate agent in town. But records were scant, boxes had disappeared from archives. Theo posited a theory. Vane had uncovered corruption in property dealings, money laundering, bribery, forged deeds. He recorded the tape as both prophecy and threat. The piper referenced a ledger balancing debts, the crooked agents who'd profited. If they ignored the whistleblower, they'd die. Somehow, decades later, Someone resurrected the recording to finish the vendetta. Marjorie grew restless. Waiting to be targeted felt worse than action. She remembered the property keys from Pritchard's other box, the one she'd shelved in the back of Second Chances. On a hunch, she retrieved them and cross-referenced the brass tags with the will's annex listing Vane's properties. Several matched. One intrigued her especially: Storage Garage Number 7, Abernathy Lane. With Westcott's reluctant blessing and a detective escort, Marjorie and Theo visited Abernathy Lane. Rusted roll-up doors lined the alley. Key 7 fit perfectly. Inside, dust-covered tarps mounded over shapes as large as refrigerators. They lifted one tarp to reveal steel filing cabinets padlocked shut. The cabinets bore stenciled labels: title deeds 1978-83, tax files, audio logs, chemistry lab. Against the back wall perched a reel-to-reel recorder alongside boxes of blank cassettes. They had stumbled onto Vernon Vane's archive, and perhaps a killer's toolkit. Forensics catalogued everything. One drawer held expired vials of digoxin, digitalis. Fingerprints belonged to Harold Pritchard, Lisa Berryman, and a third person, Raymond Cutcliffe, Pritchard's former business partner, now majority owner of Coastline Realty, the largest firm in the county. Cutcliffe had inherited Pritchard & Cowis after Harold's death. Motive surfaced like a leviathan. Cutcliffe was arrested that night, but he smirked through booking. He claimed ignorance, suggested evidence was planted. No confession. Without a smoking gun, and with his high-priced solicitors, the case looked shaky. Marjorie couldn't shake one detail. The box delivered to Second Chances had arrived after Cutcliffe was already in police custody for questioning. Someone else had dropped it, green marker and all. There was another player. At 3 a.m. her phone vibrated again. Unknown number, text only. Bring the will to Ridge House cellar. Midnight tomorrow. Come alone or the piper plays for the archivist. Theo. She called him, no answer. She called Westcott, voicemail. She paced until dawn, brain buzzing like a jar of hornets. When Westcott finally answered, she was constrained by procedure. They needed warrants, tactical teams. Marjorie feared bureaucracy would stall until Theo's life drained like sand. She chose a gamble. At 11:40 p.m., dressed in dark jeans and a wool coat against the biting wind, Marjorie parked on the headland. She'd photocopied the will and tucked the original into a document tube. A hand-crank flashlight, pepper spray, and her phone rounded out the kit. Ridge House was a blackened husk. Charred beams protruded like broken ribs. The cellar access, a storm door on the leeward side, remained intact. She descended stone steps into clammy darkness. Someone clicked on a camping lantern. The circle of light revealed Theo, gagged and bound to a support post, and behind him a woman with silver hair pulled into a ballerina bun. She wore a tailored trench coat and pointed a small pistol. "Thank you for punctuality," the woman said in the same smoky cadence as the cassette voice, aged but unmistakable. "Vernon Vane," Marjorie blurted, heart ricocheting. "Vivian," the woman corrected. "Vernon was my husband. I completed his work." Marjorie swallowed. "You predicted the deaths. You killed them." Vivian smiled without mirth. Vernon recorded prophecies only after gathering knowledge. He deciphered patterns, heart conditions, addictions, knew who would fall when. But his partners plotted to steal the portfolio. They poisoned him in 1984. Corporations can't murder, but people can. I rallied evidence, but the law called it a disappearance. So I engineered justice. She paced, gun steady. Pritchard was next, but age intervened. Berryman lacked the stomach to keep secrets and met her fate. Cutcliffe will follow, regardless of your constabulary's folly. Then the ledger balances. The will grants you everything, Marjorie argued, voice trembling. Why kill more? Vivian's eyes flashed. It grants the custodian, not me. Vernon believed only a pure steward could rebuild our town, shield it from predatory profiteers. He chose random virtue. I accepted, but I required a test. You, Miss Blakely, stand at the crossroads. Deliver the will, forsake curiosity, walk away, and you remain innocent. Refuse, and you join the tally. Marjorie's mind raced. She sensed a shift, the mania of someone who'd lived too long on the edge of retribution. Negotiation felt like coaxing a feral cat. I'll give you the will, she said slowly, unscrewing the tube. Let Theo go. Vivian tilted her head like a curious raven. After. Marjorie's fingers brushed the document. She hesitated. Something in Theo's wide eyes, hope, despair, galvanized her. Instead of holding out the will, she flicked on the hand-crank flashlight and hurled it, beam strobing at Vivian's face. Vivian flinched, firing instinctively. The bullet ricocheted off a pipe. Marjorie lunged, pepper spray primed, and emptied it into Vivian's eyes. The older woman screamed, dropping the gun. Marjorie kicked it across the floor, then ripped tape from Theo's mouth and wrists. Sirens wailed above. Westcott's backup, summoned by Marjorie's emergency ping the moment she parked. Officers stormed the cellar, cuffed Vivian, and retrieved the weapon. She spat curses thick with tears, the portrait of vengeance collapsing under halogen beams. Outside, paramedics checked Theo's vitals. Westcott draped a blanket over Marjorie's shoulders. You took a hell of a risk. I took the will back, Marjorie replied, voice shaking. Now what? Now we find the rightful custodian, Westcott said, and indict those who thought themselves above the law, starting with Vivian Vane and Raymond Cutcliffe, partners in orchestrated murder. But the tape, prophecies, Marjorie began. Predictions can be engineered, Westcott answered. People frightened and manipulated. Evidence suggests Vivian used Vernon's archives to anticipate medical weaknesses, then timed poisonings to match her husband's vision. Marjorie stared toward the charred mansion. Lightning licked the distant horizon, illuminating Ridge House like a ghastly lantern. Will Whitminster ever feel honest again? Theo joined them, eyes red but alive. With you holding that will, I reckon we've got our best shot. Weeks later, second chances reopened. Donations resumed, but Marjorie vetted each box personally. The estate of Vernon Vane, under court supervision, was transferred to a community trust aimed at affordable housing and historical preservation, exactly what the will described. On a quiet afternoon, Theo popped by with coffee. Marjorie shelved paperbacks, pausing at a dog-eared mystery. You know, she said, if not for an obsolete cassette, we'd never have uncovered any of it. Theo raised his cup. To thrift shops and second chances. The bell above the door tinkled as another customer entered, searching for something forgotten that might save a life, or at least a story waiting to be told.